So, Wedders, thank goodness for Peter Hudson.
Why thank goodness for Peter Hudson?
Well, my mum was a Collingwood supporter, and she sent me off to watch Glenorchy Magpies, the local TFL team, and Peter Hudson was the coach, and he then came out of retirement and he played at full forward. And when you're in Tassie, you picked a local team. And naturally enough, you'd normally go Magpies and Magpies. But because Hawthorn were up there in 1975 and Hutto was the coach and this former great from Hawthorn, I picked Hawthorn. So, thank goodness to Saint Peter Hudson.
A good move this week. Wouldn't want to be a Pie supporter this week, I dare say.
And that's about where we'll leave that, won't we?
I think so.
They've all just shown how stupid they are once and for all. It's public and we all know about it. We move on.
I think so.
Hey, where's Bards?
Where is Bards indeed? I think he might be offered a Delta Goodrum concert tonight, but ask the big fella when we next see him.
Well, are we going to have a dedication to Delta Goodrum tonight, or is it a dedication to The Voice? Because that's, Bards is auditioning for the next series.
I would agree to that, but I wouldn't want to give such piffle any more publicity than it has already.
And I don't want to give Bards because he's a lot taller than me.
Yeah, I reckon he probably fights a bit better than I do. I'm not saying he's a violent man. I mean, you wouldn't be a violent man with Delta Goodrum in your CD collection, would you? Sure, I'd better do his rundown on last week's game, though.
So, scores?
Scores. Hawthorn 18-10, 118, defeated the Gold Coast after a pretty good game and a pretty good fight, 14-8-92. Hawthorn goals, Franklin 5, Burgoyne and Roughhead 3 each. Grimley, with his first kick of football in an senior AFL game, 1. Bruce, Bailey, Gunston, Mitchell, Hodge and Puopolo all hit the scoreboard as well. What did you make of the game, Grant?
It was painful.
It was a bit painful, wasn't it? I thought the Gold Coast did a pretty good job.
I think we were wondering where Buddy Franklin was going, whether he was off to the Gold Coast in the first half.
Yeah, I'll talk a bit more about that later. But as it turned out, I would have had him in my votes. Do you have Bard's votes in front of you?
Yeah, well, he texts them in to us. Yeah. We should say Bard's happy birthday, because he is actually celebrating his birthday. And probably celebrating something else, but we'll let Bards let everyone know about that next week. So, Bards went Lewis with 5, Simpkin with 4. I think now I've got the photo of Simpkin, he's happy and he's going to give him some votes. Stratton with 3, Dunstan, or as he calls him, Dunstall, with 2, and Sammy Mitchell with 1. So, another good spread. And I think the thing about Bards' votes is it's showing how balanced the team is and how they're spreading the workload. There's no one really dominating the votes this year.
No, Birchall was out in his own early, but obviously he was absent the last week or so. We've got a fairly even spread at the moment of guys that are carrying the load. That's quite a good position to be in. I think what Clarkson is doing is something similar to what he did in 2008, and that is bringing this side along, training them as though it's a Melbourne Cup and having them peak in September. I think by his own admission last year, we were playing catch-up a bit through the middle of the year and having to fire on all jets and all cylinders earlier than we needed to. This year, I think it's just building quite nicely.
Tell you what he is doing, which is similar to 2008, and that is he's leaving Ruffy down forward.
Yeah, it's a different Roughhead this year, isn't it? Nobody disputes his quality when he's on the ball and in the ruck, but Roughhead inside the forward 50 is a lethal proposition when he is on his game.
So it is going to challenge a few sides because they're going to have to decide now, are they going to go to Buddy or they're going to go to Ruffy? And can they cover them both? And if one's covered, the other one's going to explode.
Well, then, of course, the further problem presents itself when Hale goes forward and then they've got Gunston rotating through the forward line. Rioli's probably 2 or 3 weeks away. It's a forward line that is as good a forward line, I think, as we've seen in the AFL in the last 15 or 20 years.
It's quite exciting, isn't it?
It's very exciting. You almost forget about Cyril Rioli, and he just adds another dimension again, and get him back and fit. God help the rest of the sides trying to fight for the flag this year.
So the only thing we have to worry about is Geelong. Is that what you're saying?
I think, yes. That said, when we played them earlier in the year in the game that we should have won, we did that without Brian Lake. Now, I saw comments on Facebook this week, a couple of supporters, and one supporter in particular, having a bit of a go at Lake and questioning his output. But when you consider, I think the guy's had 5 goals kicked on him in his last 4 games, I would have thought that means that he's doing his job rather well. You put him onto a Hawkins or a J-Pod, and it probably nullifies one of their full targets.
So I think we can't wait to that game because it's really going to tell us how this team's balanced up.
Yeah, I agree. I'm looking forward to that one more than I've looked forward to a Hawthorn Geelong game in quite a while.
Hey, were we a bit disrespectful to the Gold Coast, especially to someone like Gary Ablett? Did we take that view where Bards said, we'll just let him run around and get kicks, where they're actually becoming a much better side, so he's starting to be the glue amongst them?
Look, I don't know that we were disrespectful to the Gold Coast. I think the reality is that they'd come off some pretty good form. I think that they're a better side now than what perhaps we thought they were, not only the Hawks, but the greater competition. They've got, I don't want to make this a Gold Coast show, but they've got some very good midfielders. Obviously, O'Meara's a very, very good player. Presti is an excellent player. David Swallow's a very good footballer too. So they've got some midfielders that can do some damage. And, Gary Ablett's going to get possessions regardless of who you put on him. So, disrespectful, no. I think it was just a case of Hawthorn clicking into gear at the right time last week. I never felt at any point we were going to lose the game. Class just got us over the line. Next year, the year after, the Gold Coast are going to be fearsome, though.
And last one about disrespectful, booing Campbell Brown, unnecessary?
I didn't hear that, I've got to be honest.
Couple of times.
I think that's poor. The guy, he's a Gold Coast player with a Hawthorn heart, I would say. I didn't see any evidence of him targeting Hawthorn players on the weekend. The guy bled brown and gold. He put his body on the line time and time again when he was a Hawthorn player. So if that is what happened last weekend, then I think it's poor form, and I think those responsible need to take a long, hard look at themselves.
Just heard a few voices, but, enough to spoil it. They've got to remember the line in the sand game when he was coming off the ground.
Jason Winderlick remembers that game.
Well, we better move on. There's no blast.
I've got a whack, though.
A whack, a Wedders Whack. I like that. Here we go.
I'm going to give myself an uppercut. At half-time last week's game, I jumped onto Facebook and gave Buddy Franklin a fearful bake. And that was wrong. That was very wrong of me. The great man had a poor first half, and I think by his own admission he would agree to that. But after half-time, he played a fantastic hour of football. I questioned his integrity as to whether or not he wanted to be in a Hawthorn jumper with these ongoing contract negotiations. And again, that was wrong of me. Buddy Franklin, you're my hero, and I'm sorry.
I like it. Well, I'm going to say fair suck of the sav, right?
All right.
Because it's the same thing, but fair suck of the sav. Come on, buddy, just sign, please. You're driving us mad.
Yeah, I agree, mate.
I mean, I think Bronx cheers come out from our pure frustration that he won't sign. We want him to sign, and we're now watching guys like Joe Watson and Trent Cotchin, who are franchise players for their respective clubs, signing, and we just want our franchise player to sign. So fair suck of the sav, bud. All right, this is going to be a nice, short, sharp show, Wedders. We've got to do from the back line, and I won't get the toilet roll out, but you know what you've got to do here? You've got to do that radio voice of, from the back line.
Okay.
As he runs to the app to find who's in the team.
Straight from the Hawthorn Football Club app. Backline, Stratton, Lake, Guerra. Halfbacks, Gibson, Birchall, Mitchell. Across the centre, Smith, Hodge, Shields. Half forwards of Hill, Franklin and Lewis. Puopolo, Roughhead and Bruce in the forward line, with rucks being Hale, Sewell and Burgoyne. Interchange, Grimley, who was super last week in his first game. Simpkin, Durea, Bailey, Cheney, Savage and Osborne. So good luck finding four to fill that interchange bench, because that's a quality side.
Who's out with a back injury and an ankle injury? Because that seems to be the last couple of weeks.
Well, Gunston's out with a calf injury. That's what we're being told. It seems that they've ditched the whole general soreness thing.
Mark Evans has moved on, Wedders.
Mark Evans has moved on. Ian Robson's moved on as well.
Again.
Look, I don't know whether I expect that is the side that's going to run out, but then that said, Birchall was a late withdrawal last week, so maybe there'll be one or two changes to that.
Grimley plays again, doesn't he?
I would think so. I know Bailey's been named and Hale's back in, so it's an interesting one. I know that they take all three, and I got a suspicion they may just give Bailey a rest. It won't be because he's been dropped or for poor form, because he's been excellent, but they're going to be able to handle Melbourne without him. So yeah, I'd give Grimley another go because he was good.
They might give Ruffy a rest,
Yeah, they might, but he hasn't been doing a lot of rucking this year, so he probably doesn't need the break. Plus, we've got the freshen up with the bye next week.
Do I have to ask the question, where do we win this?
No,
not really.
You really don't. We win it because, well, Melbourne, I don't like to swear, but Melbourne are shite. I feel bad for their club, and they're going to get pummeled on the weekend.
You're saying to me before we started recording that they remind you of Fitzroy, and it's a bit like that, isn't it?
It is a bit like that. I know they've got the backing of the MCC, and so they've probably got some more clout than the old Lions outfit had. But, geez, I don't see how they rebuild this club with the way that the draft picks have been allocated to the Gold Coast and Greater Western Sydney. I don't see opportunity here for Melbourne to rebuild this club at any time, any real hurry. What do you see happening?
I see this club being picked off. I see their good players like Watts and Frawley.
You want to run that by me again?
Or maybe Mitch Clark's another one.
That might be the funniest thing said on this program this year.
No, the fact that the Bards is auditioning for The Voice with Delta Goodrum's the funniest thing that's been said so far. No, you know what I mean. They're a long way behind everybody, even the likes of St Kilda, Western Bulldogs, Greater Western Sydney. For all the picks they've been given and all the changes of coaches, they've gone nowhere fast, and they don't look like they've got a base to start with.
No, I agree. I couldn't name more than half a dozen players that would get a look in on another AFL list, let alone another AFL starting 22.
All right, well, let's go to the inevitable. Margin. You go points. Bards makes me go goals now.
Do you have Bards as margin?
No, he hasn't given me a margin.
Okay, 138 points.
Yeah, well, I was going to go 17 goals, which is 102 points.
Okay.
It could be ugly.
It could be ugly, and I think Clarkson would have given the boys a bit of a rocket after last week, and I think one of the really ordinary sides is going to cop it this year, and I think Melbourne are in the gun this week.
So we're leading into the bye, and so naturally enough we'll go pretty flat out, won't we?
I would think so. As a Hawthorn fan, you want to see them win by as far as possible. I don't think percentage is going to come into it at the end of the year, so all I can really hope for is that Melbourne have a go early and keep it fairly competitive, because if they get blown out of the water in the first quarter, then it's going to be a very, very bad afternoon for them.
So we've got a challenge next week. We've got a bye show.
Yeah, that'll be fun. We'll have plenty to talk about.
From the back line's going to be interesting.
We can get a debrief from Bards on his Delta Goodrum concert tonight. And, he's got some other things he probably want to talk about. He won't have been here for a couple of weeks, so he'll have things to say. Who knows where the Collingwood saga is going to finish. There might be a little bit going on in the next week or so.
Well, we've still got to get from the back line. So what about we set Bards a challenge as to he's from the back line? I was thinking that he's got to pick his best 22 of players that have played less than 25 games for the club. What do you reckon about that one?
Yeah, not bad. We'll go with that.
Righto. So, Bards, put your margin into the site so everyone knows how much you're going to win by, and get your thinking cap on for the from the back line side next week. So, Adam, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.